Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Rausam Pereira. Strongly hitting back at Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan's rant at the UN General Assembly, India has said its citizens do not need anyone else to speak on their behalf, and least of all, those who have built an industry of terrorism from the ideology of hate. Khan delivered his maiden speech at the 74th UN General Debate on Friday, and in his almost 50-minute address, devoted half of its time to India and Kashmir, drumming up hysteria over nuclear war. Responding to Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan's speech, India said his speech, in which he talked of unleashing nuclear devastation and used words like bloodbath and pick up the gun, qualifies as brinkmanship, not statesmanship. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze India's response to Pakistan at the UNGA. Joining me on the program today are Meera Shankar, former ambassador, Sreeram Chaulia, foreign affairs expert, and Major General Ravi Arora, retired, chief editor, Indian Military Review. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Sreeram Chaulia, as far as Imran Khan's speech is concerned, the nuclear threat that he brought about, is the world going to sit up and take notice of what he said and do something about it?
Well, it's certainly going to make them look even more dangerous and destabilizing because. And I think that Imran, if you look at him as a politician on the world stage, clearly he's harking back to the domestic audiences and the domestic constituencies when he's making this speech. He has no interest, or I think he's already realized the game is up. He tried, Frank, to start with the UN Security Council. They called for informal consultations. Nothing came out of it. Then they tried UNHRC, a debate. Nothing came of it. This was the last throw of the dice, UN Security Council. After this, the global circuit is kind of winding up now. There's no more such big event where they will keep on carrying out their propaganda about Kashmir. So, in a way, it was like a culmination of his so-called heroic image in Pakistani nationalist circles and among the Islamists and the jihadist groups, and most importantly, his minders, his bankrollers, the Pakistan military. So, they sent him with that mission, that this is almost like a suicide mission. You go there and you implode there. That's metaphorically what the Pakistan state has been doing over the years, this proxy war. This is a continuation of that, on the world stage. And all it does is obviously bring a lot of negative, light on Pakistan. Imran even admitted that, our military trained jihadists and we took money from the Americans throughout the Soviets. And then he said even after 9/11, and in sometimes when he goes abroad, he tries to play this game of, I am a moderate and I'm trying to clean up our country, which in the past used to be under, jihadist, control. So he had said in an earlier US trip that 30 to 40,000, armed fighters are running amok in my country and I'm trying to, corral all of them. So this time I think the intention, it seems, one was to please his masters in Rawalpindi. The other was to try and project that, look, we have come a far way from that era. But the point is, the problem with him, of course, is that everyone realizes that the same processes and the same destructive forces that control that nation are still in power. So it's exposing the kind of state that Pakistan is and the kind of society, the way they have mobilized people to on the basis of, as the General was saying, that the Islam and then the non-Islamic, and that there is a clash of civilizations. This language, Frank, is the same language of Osama bin Laden or of Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. There's no difference. And Imran, by the way, if you look at his career, his political rise, he's in the Khyber province, he is himself a Pashtun, but largely has been out of the region. But his party, Tehreek-e-Insaf, rose to prominence in the last few years with the active assistance of the Taliban. Because the Taliban attacked all other candidates and cleared the field for Tehreek-e-Insaf to win that province.
Right.
And from there he, leaped on the coattails of the military to become prime minister. They again cleared the field for him. So he is actually paying his dues to his masters. That's how I see it. And frankly, how the international community sees it and how much, disgraced Pakistan is becoming, they don't care, because all they are looking at is the power structure at home and somehow sustaining it through this non-stop, unrelenting propaganda and warmongering.
Right. All right. Sreeram Chaulia, so would you have liked to have seen more on the trade front?
Well, Frank, I think we are resolving them, and Trump always, in fact, Trump has already said that there's a bigger long-term settlement and then there is a deal. So what he clearly means is that he's not going to let up on some of the demands, and it's again tied to the domestic politics in the US, right? He has 14 months and there's a potential impeachment coming up for him now. So he's looking at how to shore up his own base by countering and challenging developing countries in general, including India. So the trade, but certainly I think they have narrowed the differences, and some give and take is going to happen. There is expectation that maybe the GSP, the Generalized System of Preferences, will be reinstated, and return we may buy more American products and address some of the IPR concerns, whatever. But end of the day, the trade. I just look at the contrast. I mean, Pakistan-US trade is next to nothing. It's and so ours is $150 billion, US-India. So I think clearly the from a pure realpolitik and materialistic considerations, it's a no-brainer that the US should choose us. But then there are some situational advantages that Pakistanis have enjoyed because of their geography and because of the Afghan peace process that they've tried to exploit. And Imran has only that agenda actually with Trump, while we have got a much broader list of items to discuss. So I think the fact that the Quad ministerial is also going to happen now for the first time at the level of ministers, that's also interesting news, because it shows that we may be looking at broader geopolitical role for India-US cooperation, which had looked to be dicey under Trump since he came in 2 years ago. But I just want to also add, Frank, that in our right to response, one of the interesting features that our diplomat brought out was the situation of minorities in Pakistan. That was important to put on record. She even quoted the percentages. It was very important. So the way it has shrunk, she mentioned some of the ethnic groups. People were expecting, our media and nationalistic circles in India were expecting the Prime Minister will, take the name and, give full charge. But as Meeraji was saying, he soared high, but somebody had to hit back at them. And so we designated a person from the diplomatic corps to do it. And it was necessary because, when they use the human rights bogey against us, it's very important for the world to know who is the biggest human rights offender. And so, Frank, so to go back to trade, if you look at it, India has got the economic advantage, India has got the geopolitical advantage, and India also has the moral high ground.
Right.
And the moral high ground was established by our right to reply. And the other deals, what the Prime Minister did over the full week of visits in the US was to advance the material and the realpolitik considerations to make India an important player. So Prime Minister last addressed the UN General Assembly 2014, and now 19. If you look at the difference, we from 2 trillion we became a $3 trillion economy. Our diaspora, the way it was in 2014, is much more organized, much more vocal, much more present, as we saw at Howdy Modi.
Sure.
And then you have the trade agreement that's likely to come in. So if you add up all that, India is like overpowering Pakistan in all quarters. And,
right.
But we should not gloat over this, because we still know that there are attempts at infiltration at the LOC, and that they still have dirty tricks in mind. They still have, as our right to response said, is the only country in the world where they're paying pension to a UN designated terrorist like Hafiz Saeed, and you don't know what Masood Azhar even gets, maybe much more than a pension.
Right.
So I think we have to be wary, we have to be cautious, and we have to be in full alert, especially along the LOC, because Imran is saying that the moment the curfew lifts, as he says, the restrictions lift, there will be a bloodbath. So clearly they are saying they're now coming out the bare knuckles, because they have failed in all the civilized forms of combat with India. They've been defeated, but now the uncivilized side is going to come up, and we have to be ready for it.
All right. Closing comments now from all my guests, starting, and Sreeram Chaulia, close the show for us with your quick concluding remark.
Well, Frank, I'll simply say that it is a job well done by Prime Minister Modi. He more than fulfilled the nation's expectations, and more importantly, at the General Assembly, he put forward the vision of India's duty to the world, and how we are sharing global public goods for the rest of the developing world, how our model is, as a developing country which has democracy, is increasingly being recognized for bringing, people out of poverty, providing health care, improving the environmental conservation. These are the UN values. So India is in sync with the UN values, and that's why we won this battle. Pakistan is actually in the opposite camp, where it is promoting hatred and religious bigotry and clash of civilizations and these kind of ideas, which actually should be rejected outright. I don't, except Turkey's Erdogan, for example, hardly anybody seemed to bother for Imran Khan, and many were even walking out while he was making his speech. I think more people heard our right to reply by our junior diplomat than the Prime Minister of Pakistan. So it just shows, in a way, we have put them in the place, but no time to be complacent, because end of the day, hard national security realities remain on the ground, and we should be on full alert to retaliate and to check terrorism.
Okay, all right. On that note, then, we'll call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. That's it from me. See you again next time.